Matthew 15. I'm going to read from the NIV. We've been looking, of course, for a long time now at the life of Christ as revealed in the Gospel of Matthew. And we're going to see Jesus. Well, he's going to get all up in our business today. That's the only way I know how to put it. This is one of those times where Jesus is just going to say things, and if it doesn't affect you, then you weren't listening. Not to me. I'm not talking about me. You weren't listening to what Jesus has to say, because this affects us all. I think sometimes this passage is used to make it sound as though that Jesus is anti-tradition. Let me just give a preface. That's actually not true. Jesus kept traditions. Jesus went to a Hanukkah celebration. Jesus went to the synagogue. Those things were tradition. Synagogue itself was not commanded by God. It was a tradition while they were in exile that developed in order to continue the preaching of the word, the praying together, the building of community. It was a good thing for them to do, and it was a good, healthy tradition, but it was that. But Jesus participated. All that to say, he was not against tradition. People who are against tradition sometimes try to co-opt Jesus into their own thing, and so they'll come to this passage and say that. That's not what he's getting at. So as we go through this and Jesus talks about the traditions of the Pharisees, he's not being anti-tradition. He's teaching us something far deeper, far more important, and something that whether you are a traditionalist or not, still hits home. Sometimes it's not tradition that actually we struggle with. Sometimes it's comfort. And comfort, of course, is what often becomes tradition. But it's really comfort that we're looking for. So we like things to be the way that we like them. All of us are that way, right? We all have routines, we have habits, we have preferences of things that we like. I like my coffee hot. I said I like my hot coffee hot. That's why it's called hot coffee, right? I don't know why when you go to a drive-thru and you say, I would like a coffee, they ask you the temperature. It's coffee. But that's because some of you have the tradition of making it what comes out of Satan's pituitary gland, known as iced coffee. That's your tradition. That's what you're comfortable with. The Lord will rebuke you someday, and it'll start to work out of your system, probably when your doctor tells you you're diabetic. But it's all preferences. And I know I joke about that, but really I know that's preference too on my end of things, that it be hot. Okay. Well, all we know about Jesus is he doesn't want it room temperature. He's not a fan of lukewarm. That he told us, spew you out of my mouth like vomit. That's what Jesus says about lukewarm. So we know he has some preference. We like to baptize our preferences. We like to make them religious. We like to make them have some force of, we must do this. And so that then sometimes will become tradition. Some religious groups will make that tradition with a capital T, which means that's no longer optional tradition. That is law tradition, law level tradition. Now, in the churches of Christ, we never do that. You know why? Because we don't write them down. So there's no small t, capital T. Ours are unwritten, okay, but they're there. You all know they're there, but we would never write them down because that would be wrong. And so you see what we do. If we come to this passage with an open mind and an open heart to, okay, Jesus, show us what you want to show us. All of us are going to come out of it with something in our life that applies. I don't know what that is for you. I don't have a clue, but the Lord does and the Spirit does. So I'm going to encourage you, let him do it. Okay. Open up your heart, open up your mind. And don't just go, oh, those doopy Pharisees, they're cranky again. Because he's not really just talking to the Pharisees. He calls the whole crowd up and makes them listen to what he was going to tell the Pharisees to correct them. So he must want the rest of us to get it. So here we go. Matthew 15, verse 1. Then some Pharisees and teachers of the law came to Jesus from Jerusalem and asked, why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? We'll come back to that. It's hard for me not to stop there and talk about it. They don't wash their hands before they eat. Jesus replied, and why do you break the command of God for the sake of your tradition? For God said, honor your father and your mother, and anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. But you say that if anyone declares that what might have been used to help their father or mother is quote unquote devoted to God, they are not to honor their father or mother with it. Thus, you nullify the word of God for the sake of your tradition. You hypocrites! Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. And Jesus called the crowd to him and said, listen and understand. What goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them. Now he's going to go and say some more, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I want to go back actually, and I overclicked, and look at that first couple of verses. So the Pharisees come to him from Jerusalem. Now understand, this is like walking like from here to Comanche. So they walk from here to Comanche to go and say, your disciples don't wash their hands. How uptight do you think you might be to walk to Comanche to say, you're going to wash those hands? What do you think? I wonder, my grandmother was not an uptight woman. My grandmother liked to wash her hands. Okay. So I was looking just before I came up here. She would not be happy. I've been working on a few different cars in our fleet at home, doing brakes and pads and shoes and all that kind of stuff and rotors. And I noticed, I looked down, and some of that brake dust, I still got it. Okay. I still got it. So if there was a Pharisee in the room, I'm in trouble. They would look at my thumbnails and go, why doesn't James wash his hands? Look at that. And some of you may now be going, oh, that's disgusting. Yeah, I know. It's okay. It's all right. Anyway, I don't know that the brake pad dust is really going to be the worst thing you could get under your nails. Every time I ever went to New York City, I don't know how many people here have ever been, but you walk everywhere. You're up and down on the to the subway and everything, and it is so weird. At the end of a day, nails look like you have been a mechanic in a shop, and you may have done nothing but go up and just live. You just lived there. You did touristy things. You went to the park. You went and ate pizza. But at the end of the day, it is disgusting. And I won't even tell you what happens when you blow your nose, but it looks a lot like the nails. That's all I'm saying. It's disgusting. So you can see from Pharisees' point of where they would say, these guys aren't even washing their hands. That's gross. My grandmother would have thought so. When you cooked with my grandmother, and she's the one who taught me how to make bacon and eggs. When you cooked with my grandmother, you washed your hands like 35 times in the making of bacon and eggs. And my family can tell you that stuck with me. I spend more time washing my hands than I do cooking the bacon and eggs. You just wash and rewash and everything else, just constantly. I don't even think I cooked. I don't think I touched raw chicken for 2 years because I just got tired of washing my hands. I worked at Chick-fil-A and I was like, I'm over this. And so I just left it alone for a while. But that stuff matters. But for us, it matters for different reasons. For us, it's about germs. It's about bacteria. It's about, the possible poisoning of salmonella and things like that. And so it does actually matter from a very practical point of view. These Pharisees didn't know any of that. They didn't know that. They had no idea about germs and bacteria and salmonella. That wasn't what they were about. What they were about was the fact that in their tradition, capital T written down, in the tradition of the rabbis, it was said that you had to wash your hands, and you had to wash them 7 times. There was a certain ritual that you went through before you ate. And if you didn't do that, they weren't worried about that your hands were dirty. They were trying to say, you are unfaithful. So they follow Jesus and his disciples from Jerusalem to where they are. Again, walking to like Fangs or Comanche, depending on the distance, somewhere in there, in between there. They walk that far to say, your guys don't care. They don't care about washing their hands, and that means they don't really care about the traditions. And if they don't care about the traditions, then that means they don't care about the Lord. And you'd say, well, how did you get there again? But that's exactly where they went. But again, we could do easily the same thing. Depending on what religious tradition you grew up in, whether it's Church, Christ, Baptist, Methodist, you have certain ways of doing things. And when you go to a different church, then sometimes you go, oh, I'm not sure that was okay. Was that all right? That's different from the way that we did it. Is that all right? And sometimes we jump to that must have been wrong. And these people just don't respect the word of God. I've heard that as a quote. That I'm quoting someone now. They just don't respect the authority of God's word. Just because it was a different tradition, maybe not right or wrong, maybe not even good, better, or best, just, they did it differently. Some people have a sermon, then they have the Lord's Supper. What? I've known people that freaked them out when they went places. Some people have a very low freak out threshold. You know that, right? Anything just strays a little bit out, they're on it. The Pharisees were that way because they had taken their traditions and started to look at them as though they were the right and the wrong, not just this is how we do it. And they were judging one another based on, do you keep our traditions? They thought that it made them holy. They thought it made them right. They thought it made them the true believers, and everybody else was a slacker. And they were wrong. Jesus points out to them that they're wrong about that. We move forward a little bit. So they come, they get upset. It wasn't about their hygiene. It was about something else. And Jesus, when he confronts them, says, you realize there's a much deeper problem that's going on here, don't you? Let's talk about your parents. And I don't think that he just pulled this just out of thin air. I think he meant this example because somebody in that crowd, maybe somebody's in that crowd, was guilty of this. I think this was a little bit like, in the story in John about the woman who was caught in adultery, and Jesus scribbles on the ground, and we have no idea what he said. But the people start dropping their rocks. Those guys start dropping their rocks and going home because whatever he wrote in the ground clearly convicted them of their sin and their unholiness, whatever it was. I think this is kind of the same thing. I don't think he just pulled it out of thin air. I don't think it was just an illustration. I think he is actually saying, guys, I know you do this. And what are they doing? It was a system called Corban. And some of your Bibles will talk about this and actually use the word Corban. Some translations will include that in the text. And what it means is given to God. And what these guys would do is say, well, I have pledged that this money in my account is given to God. I can't use it for anything else. Now, on a level, that would seem okay. And actually, the beginning concept was okay. For you to dedicate something to the Lord's use is fine. And it wasn't something, these were not offerings that were commanded. These were offerings of their own free will. That's an important facet of this. But that's okay. If you dedicate something to God, I'm going to take this $500 and I'm going to use this for something that has something to do, whether it's missions or church or helping the poor, whatever it is, I'm going to do this with it. That's fine. Jesus is not saying that's bad. But what they were doing was treating it like a tax shelter. I'm going to put this money over here and I'm going to call it given to God. And this way, when dad needs emergency surgery, I don't have to help because I can tell my dad, hey, this money was given to God. I can't touch it. It's God's. And of course, Jesus is saying, I think I wanted you to take care of your family more than I was concerned with this additional extra offering. I think I wanted you to I think I put that in the top 10 somewhere in there, right? I think I actually made our relationship, built the health of our relationship between us and God. He would say, I made that a part of our relationship so that when you don't honor your father and your mother, I actually withhold blessings from you. That's serious. That's serious. But they think they found a loophole. And so they're going to put it over here, and that makes that money untouchable. And so Jesus says, you have a tradition, because this is just a tradition, this putting it over here. That's just a tradition. But you actually have over here a command from the Lord, and you won't do it. What is that about? And how do you think they felt with him asking that? Especially knowing that it's very likely that at least one of them, this is their sin problem that he's calling out right there in front of everybody. Now, what if he did that with us? You have some comfort thing that is important to you, and so you said, this part of my life, God, is Corban. Maybe it's not money at all. Maybe it's relationships. Maybe it's your job. Maybe it's your home. Maybe it's your gifts and talents. God, I don't have to give those to you. I don't have to use those to help anybody else. I don't have to think about that in terms of the kingdom because that's mine. That's actually the same thing, but actually worse. They at least pretended it was for God. You're not even pretending. And we do that. We do that, don't we? So we push this over here and we say, I'm going to keep that because that's my comfort. Comfort is just, a tradition of one. Okay, that's my comfort, my tradition. It's just a tradition of one. And so then we elevate that above whatever God has commanded. Jesus said that's not right. And it reveals something about you, because all of this really is the difference between somebody who believes and somebody who doesn't really believe. You're trying to get things done from the outside instead of actually living a transformed life with a relationship with God from the heart. You're just trying to go through enough motions that you think it'll count. Anybody who's worried about what does and doesn't count is already a legalist and a Pharisee. The whole system of counting, that's what that is. It's about relationship. He's trying to get them to see that through this contrast. You've got somebody that is just finding a way out of being a Christian while claiming to be one, or in their case, they were Jews, but same thing. We're all in the same kingdom now, right? This people, he says, this people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. So you have Jesus saying, listen, I know about these guys over here, and they talk a good game. And they're saying all the right things at all the right times, and their hands are pretty clean. They wash their hands before every meal. Not just once, 7 times they wash their hands before every meal. But look at what it's turned them into. Walking for miles to point their finger at somebody and say, hey, you didn't do that right. You didn't do that the way that we said you're supposed to do that. We have a way, and you're not doing it our way. Why don't your people do it our way? But they're not looking at themselves and saying, is this the Messiah? Is what he is saying true? Would it change my life? And what's more important? This is what he wants them to finally understand. But so far, they're really not getting it. Back in verse 10, Jesus called the crowd. How you like that if you're a Pharisee? You walked all these miles because you were really sure that you had the upper hand. And then Jesus says, hey, everybody, would y'all come over here? I need to say something about what these goons have just done. That's a rough day, isn't it? So he calls the crowd to him and says, listen and understand. What goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them. He's again getting to the heart of the problem. They are still thinking everything is external. That's the difference in the way that in modern ways that we use the word religion. That's the difference between religion and real genuine faith. One is externals and rituals. Again, nothing wrong with ritual. He's never said that was wrong. It's empty ritual that's wrong. It's insincere ritual that's wrong. It doesn't mean it's wrong if every week you had 2 songs of prayer, 2 songs, and then the communion. That doesn't matter. Is that ritual? Yes. What matters is, was it worship from the heart? Or were you just punching a card, hoping that the card punch gets you into the kingdom of heaven? That's not a relationship, a card punch. Imagine if that was your marriage, and you, on your 50th anniversary, husband comes to the big anniversary party the kids are throwing for him in Hawaii, hint, hint, and I got a while, they can save up. And imagine, Emma and Ellie, that I show up with this card and it has all of these things that a good husband does. And I go, look, I did that one, I did that one, I did that one, I did that one, I did that one. Okay, now we can celebrate. Is that what marriage is about? And what if Tanya goes, I think you punched a couple extra you never really got to. Is that what marriage is really supposed to be about? And that would probably happen because it would be legit. But what? That's not marriage. Marriage is not a punch list. A relationship with God is not a punch list. A relationship with your kids is not a punch list. People that you're trying to is not a punch list, not a notch in your belt either. It's relationship and it's heart and it's transformation. Jesus says it's not you ate with dirty hands. Oh no, I got something in with my sandwich. Well, you got dirty hands, you might get something in with your sandwich. But he's saying that's not what would actually be the bigger problem, is it? The bigger problem is actually what's already there and comes out through your words, through your thoughts, through your actions. It's what comes from the heart that is the real issue. when you're willing to walk 20 miles just to rebuke somebody for not doing things the way you like it, that's a heart problem, is it not? That's a heart problem. We and they do often get it backwards that way, thinking that holiness and thinking that faith and religion does come through our rituals, even with those that are very important. C was talking about the importance of the Lord's Supper, and it is. It is a centerpiece of what we come together to do. But it is not the drinking of the cup, the eating of the bread, or the getting up and going and getting and coming back to our seat. That's the external. That's our habit, our ritual, our tradition. Nothing wrong with that. But that is not the heart of the meal. The heart of it all is what Jesus has done for us, what Jesus is doing within us, and what the Spirit is transforming inside us. These are the things that are the actual heart of the supper. It's at the heart of everything that we should do as a Christian, is that relationship with God and the change that He's making within us in big ways and small ways, both. Focusing just on the externals is how you end up becoming a Pharisee. It's accidental. The Pharisees didn't become Pharisees on purpose either. They started out with good intentions. We rake them over the coals, but they started out with good intentions. They wanted to stay faithful. They felt some safeguards were in order. That sounds familiar. We use those terms a lot. We just need some safeguards. But the problem with safeguards is they become law. And easy illustration people used for a long time is still, at least to me as a recovering speeder, it makes sense. If the speed limit is 75, which by my house it is, but I don't think anybody knows about it. But if the speed limit is 75, then surely we would be more faithful to go 65, because we're not playing on the line. We're not taking a risk. We're not just teetering there on the edge. And if 65 is faithful, then surely 55 is incredibly godly. Now, I knew a preacher who used this illustration, and by the time he got to the end of it, he had actually convinced himself that we needed to drive 20 miles under the speed limit to be faithful Christians. And I was sitting there listening going, I don't think that's where you were supposed to go with that. The problem is, just imagine now that we have then a deacon of speeding. Lord have mercy. A deacon of speeding. And now he is going to sit out there in front of my house and check to see whether or not all of us are going down that highway 10 miles under or 20 miles under. He's keeping a record. And then we come to church on Sunday morning. He says, James, you were coming in pretty hot from Goldthwaite the other day. It didn't happen. I haven't been to Goldthwaite. It was from early. And so, you're not really a faithful Christian. I say, well, but I was only doing 74 within the law. I was only doing 74. Yes, but to be faithful, it should have been 65. And that's the way those things develop. Now, it'd be crazy to do that around speed, but this is what the Pharisees did. And so to be faithful, you got to wash your hands. No, I think we need to do it more. Let's make sure they're well washed. And so then you add more and you add more and you add more. But then next thing you know, you're checking. Was that I think you just did 5 times. I think you need to go back and try that again. I heard that in a different way when an elder came up to a teenager. This is like 20 years ago, it was not here. An elder came up to a teenager and, different times, different fashions, none of that matters. Fashion is tradition, small t, doesn't matter as long as it's modest. And this young kid had a shirt. It was like a rugby shirt or something. It was something you do not tuck in. If you were going to tuck it in, this was pre-social media, but we'd have found a way to make fun of you and share the picture. That kind of a thing. You tucked it in. And so he didn't have his shirt tucked in. Well, here comes the elder. Why don't you have your shirt tucked in? You go to that bathroom right now and get that shirt tucked in. Was the elder doing gospel work, or was the elder being a Pharisee? He was being a Pharisee because the kid was so shocked, and the guy was not kind. The kid was so shocked at the unkindness of this elder that he nearly left the church. What's more important? love of that kid and gratitude that he's at church, or whether or not his appearance stands up to what your grandfather thought was. You see what I'm saying? I told you we'd get close to home, but we have to, do we not? Because we get that petty if we become externals people. We get that petty if it becomes about just keeping our preferences. It gets really silly, really fast, and really bad, really fast. And there are souls at stake. It leaves an impression for years with people, for years with people. And it discouraged them. And that was never what Jesus was about. Jesus, it says, a smoldering wick he will not extinguish, and a bruised reed he will not break off. He considers with mercy where somebody is and does not push hard when that person is fragile, as that young man actually was at that point in his walk. He needed to be built up, not torn down. And he got all the wrong thing. Our real relationship with Christ, that's what discipleship is. Our real relationship with Christ is built on a transformation of the heart from the inside out. God, change me. The things that make me comfortable aren't important anymore. What is right before you, that's what's important. What will bring other people closer to you, that is what's important. Won't be what comes to the outside. A dirty shirt doesn't mean a dirty soul, but a clean shirt can certainly hide a filthy heart. Sometimes the filthiest people are in well-pressed clothes straight from the cleaners. That's just true, because it's not about the outside, is it? And we're good at using those things to hide. Matthew 15:12. Then the disciples came to him and asked, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this?" I love this part. The disciples come to Jesus like, "Jesus, I think you might have hurt their feelings." Somebody might come say the same thing to me later. It's possible. I think you might have hurt their feelings. I think you might have offended them. Does Jesus say, "Oh, no, I didn't mean to offend the Pharisees"? No, he says, every plant, pardon me, every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be pulled up by the roots. That's probably not what the disciples expected. That's fine, because I plan to yank those weeds. Whoa, that's what he says. Leave them. They're blind guides. And if the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit. No apologies. Jesus does not apologize for standing up for the broken, for standing up for those that actually need love and building up instead of tearing down and legalism. He's not going to apologize for that ever. And so he didn't. He didn't. It's not important that they were offended. It's important that they get right with God. Peter then says, "Well, explain the parable to us. Tell us what you mean then by all that." He says, "Are you still so dull?" Jesus was in a mood. "Are you still so dull?" Jesus asked them. "Don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? But the things that come out of a person's mouth, that come from the heart, and these defile them." It's not what you eat. Doesn't matter it's still just not about all these externals. It won't be what you do to the outside. It won't even be what you bring in. It's going to be what's already there. If you're already broken and not right, you're just going to keep being broken and not right. These Pharisees are broken and they're not right. And he wants to change that. Out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. These are what defile a person. The eating with unwashed hands, that doesn't defile a person. Just think of whatever external thing you think is not that big a deal and make that a big deal for a second. Jesus is saying, listen, fixing that will not fix the heart. All these problems, murder, adultery, theft, the things that are going on in our country will not be fixed by laws. They won't be fixed by a change of culture. They won't be changed by the languages that we speak. And I mean language like the way we talk about things. They'll be changed when hearts come to repentance and turn back to God. There is no other way. Habits aren't enough. Traditions aren't enough. Speaking differently isn't enough. You can stop cussing, but still tear everybody down with the words you say. They can be nice, polite words. Fans of Downton Abbey know what I'm talking about. That lady could tear people down like nobody's business, but she never used profanity. She must have been a Southern grandmother. You got to change what's in the heart. Now, I had a Russian truck not too long ago that I was talking about. There were contaminants in the milk, and I kind of want to go back to that theme. Part of the problem is when we focus on just the externals, is it's like painting the outside of the truck. How many of you would drink water out of this truck after they're done repainting it? Anybody? For the people with eyes like mine that might be too far back, the old sign says sewage, and the new sign says drinking water. Would you drink out of that? What if they put another coat of paint on it? What if they put a really cool vinyl wrap? What if they get some blinky lights? Then would you drink out of it? Well, of course you wouldn't. Why? What has been inside that truck? This is what Jesus is trying to get them to see. Until you change what's actually on the inside and until you change the heart, nothing else will matter. Not externals. You can wash your hands all day long, but you will still be the guy that didn't take care of his mama. That's what he's getting at. You'll still be the one who is more concerned with being okay with your fellow capital T traditionalist Pharisees, but not worried at all about being right with God. Not in the real, true, relational sense. You'll still be drinking sewage out of a dirty old truck. And there's no other way around that. Peter, I think he probably had in mind that day and that conversation because of his wording. When he talks about baptism, it's the same thing. Say, well, I'm a Christian. I've been baptized. I confessed Christ. I've been baptized. I'm a Christian. And so there's no way that I can be dirty inside. He's cleansed me. Look what he says. This water symbolizes baptism that now saves you also, not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a clear conscience toward God. Now, I don't think many of us ever are baptized thinking, oh, good, I'll finally get the dirt off. I don't think so. I've not known that person. But sometimes we treat it like it was just a bath. Sometimes we treat that day in our life like it was just a bath. No change on the inside. External was there. The proclamation was there. The confession was there. The commitment was verbally there. But on a Tuesday or a Thursday, it's like it never happened. Peter is saying that's not what it was supposed to be. This was never just getting in the water. It was never just removal of dirt from the flesh. It was the pledge of a clear conscience. That comes from within, not from without. The pledge of a clear conscience toward God. It saves you. How? Because I did the right external? No. It saves you by the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at God's right hand with angels and authorities and powers in submission to him. We are saved by grace through faith because of the resurrection power of God, not just because we do a ritual. We do the ritual because God has commanded us to. And because in doing that, we are inviting Christ in to change us, not from the outside. That's just our visual, but to change us from the inside out. His Spirit comes to live within us. He comes to dwell within us, and he then works on us from then on, from the inside out. If that's something you still need to do, I'm talking about the heart part of this, then we encourage you to do that. You can do that today. If you need to talk to somebody, come and talk with us. We'll get out our Bibles, we'll study the Word, and see what God has to say to us about that. And I encourage you not to leave that undone.